Fintar guitars, Danse de la Lune cheese, and Bees handbags. What do they all have in common? They are Connecticut made. And that's the title of a new book. The author is with me tonight. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Page One, the award-winning show for writers with the reader in mind.
That draws the reader along, just like fiction.
Here's your host and producer, Zita Christian.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. As I teased in the opening, the author of the book, Connecticut Made, is with me tonight, and I can't wait for you to meet her. I've only known her for a short time, and you know how every now and then you can tell that you have an immediate connection with somebody? Well, this is it. Her name is Cynthia Parzych. Cynthia, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
My pleasure.
So we are tamping down our enthusiasm to be very serious for this show, and we're going to talk about and we're going to laugh about a phenomenal new book, Connecticut Made. I want to ask you a lot of things about the book and the content and everything, but I want to be sure that you and the viewing audience know that this is going to be part one of a two-part interview, because Cynthia is a wealth of information, and on the second show we're going to talk a lot of things that would be of particular interest to writers. But for this show, we're going to talk about this new book. And yes, we're going to wear the same clothes for both shows, so don't let that throw you off. Okay, so Cynthia, the new book, Connecticut Made. What's the purpose of the book? Tell me a little bit of an overview of the book itself.
Well, it's a travel guide, and it's basically a book that encourages people to go out and take a road trip with family, friends, visitors, and see things that are made in Connecticut, and to buy Connecticut ultimately.
Well, and I think that's really good. And what I know from things that I also saw in the book, there's a way for you to learn about Connecticut history in this book,
yes,
which
there
is so fascinating.
Which was one of the most important points of this whole exercise.
All right. I know there are a lot of people in the audience who are writers, because I hear from them a lot. And one of the things that writers are often asked, I'm sure you know, where do you get your ideas? So where did the idea for this book come from?
Well, Globe Pequot, the publisher, approached me. It's part of a series. I'm not quite sure how many books they've done, but they threw the idea at me, and they basically let me go to town and make the decisions about my approach.
Now, how did they know you? Like, why did they come to you?
I worked for them for a short period of time, for 2 years.
Okay, so they knew you already.
Yes.
They knew your credentials and your skill.
I was senior editor and their staff author as well.
Oh, okay.
Whenever they were doing a series or needed a book, they came to me and I pumped it out.
Oh, so you were a given in terms of an expertise. They already knew that you would be able to fulfill.
And I had quite a long career before I came to work for them in New York.
I'll say. So a book like this that covers so many things in Connecticut, I'm curious about the research. That's always one of my favorite parts of any project, a writing project. How did you do the research? Where did you start?
I started in places that I knew. This book is organized subject by subject category of different businesses, and the whole idea was to take it as much around the state as we could manage. And the easiest thing for me, having been away from Connecticut, working abroad and in New York for 40 years, was to start in my hometown and in the town where I now live, which is Glastonbury.
So you start in New Britain.
Yes, where
you were Connecticut made.
Yes, and what I hoped to find were a lot of those businesses that existed when I was a kid, and we'd take our weekly shopping trips on Saturday by foot in what is now Little Poland in New Britain. Most of them are gone, but a few of them still remain, and two of them I discovered are still going. One has grown, the other one has transformed into a slightly different business with new ownership, and then there was an urban miracle. These three really sort of set the tone for the rest of the book because they had all the sex appeal I needed to get people to read this book.
All right, so tell me what those three are. Now, I looked a little bit into the book, and one of them, Martin Rosals. You mentioned something in the book about people standing in line for his Easter kielbasa.
Yes.
Yeah, so that had to be, when I think about things like that, that's a business that has a very strong, they're connected to the heart of the community.
They certainly are, and you feel it when you stand in one of those lines because they're giving you advice, they're giving you recipes, they're having fights, they're giving you advice about your life, talking about local gossip, and that's what people love.
It is. It makes you part of something. It's like that old television show Cheers, where everybody's in the bar and everybody knows your name, that kind of thing. So people do like that. It's part of what makes small town living, I think, wonderful. But I think the beauty of your book is that there's a way to achieve sometimes to tap into that small town energy, that connection, even in a bigger place.
That's what I was looking for.
Well,
in the
you definitely
businesses
achieved it.
I wrote about.
So you mentioned, so we have Martin Rosals and Avery's. What is Avery's?
Avery's is an old-fashioned soda company. They bottled their soda in glass bottles still. The place hasn't changed. And I think they've been going since 1902 when they were owned by the same family until recently. And the new man who came in, whose name I can't remember, has pretty much kept the place looking
nice.
The same, full of memorabilia. And he started something brand new, which I think is brilliant marketing. He has started a line of sodas, and he has these parties for kids where kids can make their own soda. So you can have your birthday party and have your friends invent
It's like
a soda.
a signature cocktail.
But the line is the sodas that he sells on a regular basis. Some of them, including the old flavors, are things like dog drool and kid appeal things. So he's building a new heritage of fans for the product, much like me and the old product.
Sure. All right. And the third one, Urban Oaks Organic Farm. It's not called that anymore, I don't think.
No, and it's rather a sad story because Urban Oaks operated for 16 years. The farmer, Mike, who was approached by the town of New Britain to do something productive and good for this tough neighborhood with no supermarket, through a lot of intervention from his partner who was savvy about getting grants, they cleaned up what was a garbage dump and started this organic farm, and it truly was a miracle. It changed my life. I went to see them for the book, and I was invited to be on the board, and I got involved in it for the last 6 months of the business, and I won't go into the details because it's a long story about why it changed hands, but it's been bought by the people who run the Plan B restaurants in central Connecticut who live in Glastonbury.
Okay.
And they now call it Earth, spelled U-R-T-H, and they've done a great job in transforming it and making really positive changes, and they're still growing the same fantastic product.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love to hear that. That's a success story. 3 success stories. So these are the 3 that you were focusing on when you start the research for the book. I want to talk about as you're doing the research and you're going around and you're looking at all these going to different towns, looking at these different manufacturers or cottage industries. Give me 1, 2, if you can, businesses that struck you as particularly interesting or unique. Something special about them.
There were 2 that were probably the most creative I found in Connecticut.
Okay.
Fintar Guitars, which is owned by my car mechanic in Glastonbury. The guy's name is John Johnston. He's a wonderful, creative guy, a rocker with gothic looks. His specialty is fixing classic cars, but he can fix anything. And he's also a musician, a guitarist, and he now makes these Fintar guitars, which are electric guitars with classic car bits and pieces. They've got tailpipes that actually let off smoke when they're played, and lots of chrome and shiny finishes, and they're fantastic.
And that's in Glastonbury?
That's in Glastonbury.
And I want to go back to that in a minute, but what's the other one?
It's Bees by Catherine Scranton. What Catherine does, and she's located in Coventry, she takes old, beautifully tooled books with fancy, lovely graphics on the cover. And she actually has a library of them that you can pick from, or you can bring your own. And she turns them into handbags, portfolio covers, cell phone covers. And when she's finished, when she's got your finished handbag, she sends it to you with a paperback version of the book block that she's taken out of the old book. So it's given the book 2 new lives.
How did you find these places?
Well, some of them I just knew. I would say about 25% of the businesses I knew already. But I kind of organized my friends, mostly my girlfriends, because most of this was happening in the winter, and you know, Connecticut winters are tough.
Well, it keeps you inside, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd call them up and I'd say, come on, we're going on a road trip, I need your help. And we'd pack our cameras, and we blocked off the state into sections, and we'd go and visit whatever we could find and talk to people. Took photographs, because I took the photos for the book as well, most of them. And we had a ball. It was a great way to do a book.
Well, what was the criteria that you used to, I mean, my guess is there comes a point where you gather everything, you have to make some decisions about what you keep, what you eliminate. But even before you get there, I mean, just for efficient use of your time, how do you say, I'm going to go check this place out? How do they even meet that first step?
Well, you had to be allowed to visit. So in other words, they either had to have a shop front and a showroom, or you had to be able to call them up and make an appointment to go into their studio.
And you don't mean just you mean an average everyday person would be able
Precisely,
to
because the whole point was to encourage people to go and talk to these people and see what they're doing, not just shop.
Right.
And maybe learn something, as well as learn a bit about Connecticut history, because a lot of these products have a connection with local things. Once you talk to these people, you eat a cheese with a local name on it, or drink a beer, or hear a story about somebody's grandfather, you walk away with a piece of new history.
And you're connected. You have a connection. So it has to be accessible. The business has to be accessible. So one of the things that struck me about the businesses that I read about were that the owners had, certainly they wanted to make a profit. They're in business. It's not a charity, but there was a community-mindedness, or a giving back energy.
Yes, I mean, think about when you make people welcome in your house. That's what they did as far as their businesses and the way they do business. And not only would they have this attitude towards their customers, but if they were in an area where there were other businesses, there was a lot of cross-pollination. It's the way we live in Connecticut.
Yes.
When people run their businesses in the same way. And it's the kind of attitude that I think we don't find anymore in general, because we shop in big box stores. big brand supermarkets and other types of stores, shopping malls, online. If you're asked to come in and you're feeling welcome and talking to customers, you're going to go back to those people if indeed you like their product.
I think too, I think the growing success of the Small Business Saturday movement, I think that speaks volumes to what I believe is the truth, that there are a lot more people than we might realize who do want to make a concerted effort, even if it means a little bit of a financial sacrifice on their part, to support a local business. If you want that business to be there when you need the business, you support that business, even in those times when you could order online or go to a big box store or something.
Exactly. And you spread the good word.
And spread it, yeah.
If you like the people as well as the product.
Absolutely. So you get to that point where you have to make choices of what do you keep in the book and what do you, I don't know, save for later, or it just doesn't make the cut. How do you make those choices?
Well, I wanted to write about things that I would buy myself, or businesses that I think I would be interested in visiting. So I wanted to make sure people had good quality stuff. I wanted to like everybody. That wasn't entirely possible, but for the most part,
Yes.
everybody was really gracious. And also, I had to sort of spread out the businesses, so there was coverage all over the state.
Well, you mentioned too at the very beginning when we were talking, and then I mentioned in the little teaser at the opening, we're talking here's guitars and here's cheese and here's handbags, and I'm looking in the book. There's
Yes.
furniture, there's jewelry, there's just so many other things.
We
So
wanted a
these-
nice mix
Yeah.
of things to show people who bought this book that pretty much anything's possible in this tiny state of ours.
Yeah, there's quite a wealth here. So you mentioned that you took the photos. I don't know a lot about photography. My guess is there are people who are, in the audience wondering, okay, the pictures in there are great. What kind of camera did you use? I mean, is this something special, fancy?
No, it was the cheapest
Really?
little electronic camera,
Wow.
a Canon. And several of the photos were taken by some of my friends who took a better picture of a venue than I did, and they took them with their phones.
Oh, I love it. I love it. See, to me, I hear that and I think, yeah, this is possible. This is doable.
It's very possible.
It's like you don't want to look at something and go, oh, it can't be. And you create this artificial bar for yourself and go, oh, it can't be that, so I'm not going to do it. It's like, no, just do it. Get out there and do it. All right, so experience. So you're going to all these various towns. You're collecting all this information, and you had mentioned a minute ago that you wanted to look for things, include things in the book that you would buy. So I want to talk a little bit about that whole taste testing process, whether it was food or not. Did anything surprise you?
I was surprised by the good attitude of people when I was doing this book during a time in Connecticut several years ago where we were still coming out of recession. It was a miracle to see what people were doing. Sure, they were struggling, but this struggle sort of rose above all this bad press that doing business in Connecticut gets because of its taxes and its high cost of living. These people were working hard to do something to thrive. And
This is optimistic.
very optimistic, but most people are in this country.
You know what the thing is, though? I think it's bad news that gets airtime. I don't think the good news
I think
gets
you're
as
right.
much airtime. And this book is full of good news about what's going on in this state. People who have been laid off, lost their jobs, for whatever circumstances, been forced to either give up or pull their
Right.
bootstraps up and start over again.
People reinvented themselves after they got laid off or went bankrupt. They revived old business lines or old brands and many of them started in their basements or the garages. And
are there little stories like that in the book?
Yes.
See, I think there's a whole nother purpose for this book. Now, you mentioned at the very beginning that this was a book, if you're going on a road trip and you've got visitors, let's say you've got visitors from some other part of the country or overseas, and they're coming and you want to show them what Connecticut is all about. So you take the book and you say, okay, we're going to find places that are in this book, and we're going to, it's like, these are the sites we're going to see. I think there's something else. I think for somebody who is maybe an entrepreneur who is just starting out and it's like, oh, I'm not sure if I can do this, or somebody who's having a struggle and maybe always dreamed about doing something on their own, that's encouragement. This is a book of hope.
It's inspiring what's going on out there.
Yeah.
Was the stuff that drove me on to really get this right.
Oh, I'm so glad you did this. And I want to pause here just for a minute because, as I mentioned before, this is part one of a two-part interview. When we get into part two, I'm going to talk with Cynthia about an extensive background as a writer, an editor, a publisher, international expert on the whole world of book publishing. And speaking of international, I want to pause just for a tiny little minute and have you look at this book right over here to my left. Now, this is one of the many books that Cynthia was involved in. And I can't see clearly the title, Cynthia, so tell me, what's the title here?
It's actually the history of the Paul Roger Champagne Company in Épernay, France, which was Winston Churchill's favorite brand of champagne.
All right, and I see your name on the spine here, your name and John Turner. And why are we talking about this book now? Just maybe, we're not making any predictions, just maybe. Why are we talking about this book?
Well, there's a royal wedding.
I know.
And there was one just a few years back.
Yes.
And Paul Roger was the champagne that the Queen bought for the reception at Buckingham Palace after Prince William was married. Yeah. So let's hope they do it again.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. And then, even if we can't be there to share in the champagne toast, we can read all about the champagne in your book.
It's an interesting story, a great, interesting, involved family during 3 major wars in Europe.
I find that when any book has a story behind it, that to me is that's where the appeal comes from. It's not so much the facts. The facts are important, and that you want the facts to be accurate, and you want there to be enough of them so that it allows people to draw some of their own conclusions. But there's the stories that make such a difference. You mentioned that working on this book, and earlier you talked about how getting involved on the board for the Urban Oaks, that it changed your life. And you spoke in New Britain here recently where you used the phrase that it redefined your career. Working on this book redefined your career. I want you to talk a little bit about that. What do you mean?
Well, this book, which seemed to me a good way to pass my newfound time in Connecticut because I moved here from New York and London, where I was running my businesses just a few years ago. It gave my time here more purpose, and it turned into 33 lectures that I gave about this book and continue to give all over the state, which is something I've never done to promote a book before. And I have had a ball. I've met some of the best people in Connecticut who are our librarians, who are fantastic, enthusiastic people who do so much for our communities by providing really interesting activities, among them hopefully my talks.
Yes.
I met people who were interested in reading my book. Not many authors get to do that, and that is fabulous. And I also found those questions after the talk were some of the most interesting things that fed me stuff to help me revise this book and gave me ideas for some new things as well.
I think that that's one of the very special gifts when you give a talk, because I think we don't always realize how our work is received. We don't know if, well, with books you would know because you'll get a royalty or you'll get a check in some way. There's a financial evidence that somebody has bought the book, but even then you don't know whether or not they've read it. But there are a lot of things in life where we don't know if we have any effect on anyone at all.
And the life of a writer is very lonely.
Yeah, it is.
You need
sure.
to be on your own. Most people do
Yes.
to write. I can write anywhere, but most people can't. And that feedback and to talk to your audience it's a miracle.
Well, you mentioned that they gave you ideas for things that you would want to revise. So is there a revised book coming?
I don't know yet. It's down to the publisher, and I have to,
No, I
wait
understand.
on their decision.
Absolutely.
But it's time.
Well, one of the things that occurs to me is, you started off, you were talking about when you were asked to do this book, you started with your own roots in New Britain, where you grew up. Did you find overall a sense of nostalgia beyond New Britain?
Oh yeah, I think people are looking for places to shop like many of those I wrote about in this book, because it
Yeah.
reminds them of what they used to have.
Or heard about.
Or eat. Or, it reminds them of their childhood. All of those things. And the way life used to be, a little simpler.
I want to go back and just embroider a little on a comment you made earlier, and that was about the fact that your takeaway, if I read that correctly when I'm in here, was you're seeing things so much more positive in our state than we might be led to believe by what we see in the papers. And in about 30 seconds here, just, could you just elaborate on that a little bit? Because I love the optimism.
There is such an energy out there of revival in what is always described here as not a beautiful state, but with a great big Rust Belt, post-industrial horror show.
And between two nice things, but not nice ourselves.
Exactly. And what's happening is these people are tapping into old ideas, making their lives better themselves without depending on, the man.
And making their community better and the state better and all of it. And on that very optimistic note, which I so appreciate, thank you very much for coming on the show. So in addition to thanking Cynthia Parzych for being on the show, author of the new book, Connecticut Made, I also want to thank my crew. I want to thank you in the viewing audience. I love to close this show with the words of the late fantasy writer Ursula Le Guin, who said, "There have been civilizations that did not use the wheel, but there have been no civilizations that did not tell stories." So find your story, find a way to tell it, and join us next time. Thank you.
Food for the crew and guests is provided by Manchester Grill of Manchester, Connecticut, and Angelo's Restaurant of Glastonbury, Connecticut. We welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email Zita at zitatv.com or write to Zita Christian, Page 1 TV, P.O. Box 1515, Manchester, Connecticut 06045-1515. You can watch this and other episodes of Page 1 on youtube.com/Zita3x3.